When we started talking about this project, my motivation was to do the quote unquote kind of ultimate rides that I would just kind of dream of doing. And in my mind, I thought the bigger the better. And I've done some monster rides even leading up to this year, but I think that this ride had really confirmed that there is a point where it's not as fun anymore. There's a point where the riding itself is almost more of a test of grit than just purely having fun and a good time.
Yeah, okay, cool. Coolers here real quick. Well, there's nothing to it but to do it.
We rolled out just after 6 a.m. and it was maybe no more than a block or two before we hit dirt out of their neighborhood. And we kind of weaseled our way through this canyon, which was pretty dang dark. So we had lights on the bike. So essentially we started in their neighborhood, pedaled through this canyon, rode up through some single track with some rock slabs we were climbing over, and then popped out on some more concrete and took that over to the next actual zone. To come up with a route that, for one, was completely legal. I mean, that was important for us. And I knew it would mean that some of the trails that are maybe the most fun to ride wouldn't be able to be included. Because of course, you know, there's some stuff that's kind of iffy, whether it is legal or not, but we want to make sure that the route was 100% legal, that we could promote it and encourage people to go out and do it. So that was super important and kind of the first barrier. We also wanted to kind of link different trail zones together, and they did that. I think that they said they linked, it was like 5 or 6 different trail zones. So essentially, they'll go and ride all these individual spots, but they never ride from one to the other, and we connected like all these, which was pretty rad. We had Tanner Keatsman, Trevor Mejia, and Blake Mastrangelo. And these are my SoCal buddies that I know through Specialized, and going basically to their house and staying with them was the ultimate convenient way to do it. And then what was even better was Josh Rasmussen actually met up with us about 20 miles into the ride. I knew the ride day would be fun with them, but I was super grateful they took such good care of us. It's funny because it was really mellow, and obviously we're not trying to go crazy with the pace, but there is like something lingering in the air when you know the day is about to be that big. So I'm not gonna say that we weren't having fun, but there's just a weight to a route like that. So I think everyone was just kind of relaxed. It was one of those areas where you just look around and you know that there's a ton of insane riding and you just gotta wait and figure it out. And so we were staying on the fire road until we got to this trail called Rattlesnake, which was this kind of random lollipop loop we were doing throughout the day. And it was so cool because as we ride down, you could just see the hill that this trail was zigzagging down, and the climb up to it was pretty dang steep. But when we got to the top, it felt like you were just on this perfect little peak out of nowhere. It's hard to grasp the fact that you're about to ride over to it and then up and over it, and that's not even the end. So that happened multiple times throughout the day, and it was the first moment where we're looking around and being like, well, we just came from that peak over there. Actually, we climbed up and over this peak over there, and now we're going to that one that you could barely see through the clouds. So it's pretty surreal, and I love that about these big routes. It's like a sense of immediate gratification.
These are my new favorite, dude. Trader Joe's Maple Leaf Cookies. I'll show you the box. These are the best.
That next pole was the longest road pole that we had, and we had this one section where we're just going through flat Simi Valley, just light after light. We were into a headwind and it was 2 miles solid. Once we got back on dirt, the next climb was the biggest one of the day. At that point, it was heating up. I shed the arm warmers and we just climbed. But we knew we had to kind of go up and over another ridge before we got to Tanner's house, which was probably the most clutch pit stop. And Tanner's house we knew was about the halfway point. So it was great to be able to refuel. He has a full-on bike shop basically in his garage. So we put on some chain lube, kind of made sure the bikes were good to go. And what was cool about that spot as well was, for one, people were already PRing their rides. Like I think Trevor PR'd his ride right there. So he knew if I just made it to this point, it's the biggest ride I've ever done.
So we had that big climb and then awesome single track traverse, just beautiful, like off camber corners, shrubs on each side, and then we drop down here. Now we're gonna throw on the GoPro because I think the next two descents are like the most proper DH trails we're gonna ride all day. I don't know, dude, we're like, what are we stats wise now? We're
68 at 45 miles.
68, 45? Yeah, and thanks, bro.
There you go.
Cheers. So yeah, honestly, we're taking off the miles. I think everyone's feeling really good. Temps are perfect, nutrition's topped off, the support's perfect. So, I mean, dude, no complaints, man. Like this is just pure enjoyment. No suffering yet.
The trails from that point on that we were on just got better and better and better and better. And it was cool how it kind of laid out like that, because even though, yeah, it's more taxing mentally to ride more tech trails, I think they were so fun that it kind of balanced out the fatigue as far as mentally. Like the stoke of the trails got me through with the second half of the ride, you know, opposed to it being the opposite way. Like if we started with the really good stuff and then ended up on more of the fire road and road traversey stuff, maybe that'd be like a letdown. But I feel like this ride just progressively got better the entire time.
Whoa! Wow, this is crazy. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, please.
It was just one of those descents that we did that day, which could not have been better for the bike that we had. And I knew at the bottom that Trevor and Tanner would be splitting off from us. They were already about 70 miles in, and they were feeling really satisfied with their ride. And I knew, you know, from there, that's when the day starts to change a little bit, because the dynamic's gonna shift. We have different people on the ride. I'm gonna have to start relying on myself even a little bit more.
I'm not cramping or anything, like I have good energy, it's just tired, heavy.
And then we were on this ridge line, and it was just steep punches, steep descent, steep punches, steep descent. It was sick.
So we had a little road pole right there. And I was honestly dreaming of my road bike at that point because that road was incredible. And we pulled off onto a fire road, and I knew it was gonna be one of the hardest climbs of the day because I've heard about how steep some of the sections are. I knew it was long, like almost a couple thousand feet. And the guys had been talking about it. They said it's always at the end of whatever big group ride they do, and everyone just hates it.
Sorry, Derek. We had a change of plans. After 10,000 feet and 70 miles, I broke out the e-bike. This is insane. So, it's so much better.
And they were right. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And at that point, Josh and Blake were on e-bikes, and they went off in front of me, and I was kind of trying to chase them down a little bit. But I was just solo. I had my jersey fully unzipped. It got hot. It was fully exposed, no coverage. And I just climbed for a couple thousand feet. What really helped was that trail that we dropped back into town on was rad. And I remember thinking in my head, if I had more energy, I'd be having an absolute blast. But it was at that point where I was like, okay, I know this trail is really good and it is fun, but I'm also just ready to be done riding.
Dude, get me off this thing.
There's a point where you do genuinely want to stop. And I've noticed that on the last two 12-hour rides I've done, it's sort of that 6-7 hour mark where we're like 2/3 of the way done-ish, that in my head I think, okay, if we were done right now, I'd be perfectly satisfied with the day. It would have been an amazing ride, and shoot, now I still have half the day to do whatever, or relax, or something. But on these rides, you have to keep going. And there's that shift that happens mentally where you really are doing it to push yourself, and you're doing it to create a resilience data point. And it's something that you can call back on in the future. Essentially, the more resilience data points you have stacked up, the easier things are gonna be in your own perspective. And so those are important, and they allow you to do more in the future, and they literally expand what you believe that you're capable of because you got through that last thing. And that's where the value is in pushing yourself this way. So it made me think, I'm like, well, if the real goal is to just have as much fun as possible, I think capping it around that 6-ish hour mark probably is the way to go. Because after that point, it's a real test of grit, but there's value in testing your own grit because you create those RDPs. I just felt genuinely ready to be done by that point, and there was a part of me that was like, okay, I kind of wish we were done. But the thing that kept me going and kept me stoked was the Peddler's Fork. It's just a bike-oriented coffee shop and bar, and it's beautiful. So I was like, all right, let's just get there. We're gonna refuel. From there, we are within the last 10 miles, and that will ultimately be the final stretch. And then we showed up and it was closed.
You know, when you're about 12 hours into a ride and you're looking forward to the new place that you've always wanted to go that has coffee, and they don't have coffee? You know that feeling? This is that feeling. I'm still gonna look around. It's gonna be good.
And so essentially we just walked in, saw how awesome it was, realized we didn't have coffee, and then pulled some snacks out of the cooler and then just jumped back on the bike and went. So I felt confident we were gonna be able to just enjoy the last couple miles, and I knew physically I was gonna make it. I was kind of in a better mood just because we were getting so close. We made our way through this trail zone, but literally right at the end of it, we get back to the pavement and Josh's e-bike dies. He's drafting me, I end up kind of pulling past him, and then I can tell also that my mileage is really going to end just a few miles short of 100. And that's when it was in my head already of like, okay, I'm gonna have to click it over 100. And we get back to Blake's house and you guys are there. It was rad. I think I pulled a manual somehow coming into his neighborhood.
Dude, I only got 3 miles till 100. I'm gonna go get it real quick. Can I just go full circuit, like Crit Racer?
Yeah, actually good. Yeah, dude.
This is what's gonna get me through the last
I rolled
3
up
miles.
and I think right away I just told you guys, I gotta do these last couple miles. It's gonna kill me if I don't. So I literally just chugged that beer. I'm just locking out my suspension and I'm gonna go full crit mode, and I'm just gonna do as many laps around this neighborhood as it takes. And I ended up doing like 6 or 7 of them, I think. I finished my last few laps and literally rolling in, it just felt awesome.
All right, 100.1, now we're done.
Yeah, Derek.
Oh, dude, I just burnt all my last matches on that. Little road crit to finish it off.
Jumping down.
You need to make it a point to put yourself in a position to create a mental RDP through a physical endeavor. So if you put a ride on your schedule that's a PR in vert and distance, it is inevitable that something is gonna happen throughout that process that makes you a stronger human. So it got me thinking about the future of Y rides and what's gonna be the most impactful thing for me to do. And fortunately, I can go on a 4-hour ride, 5-hour ride, maybe even 6-hour rides every now and then, just with friends, and make it incredible, enjoy the experience. But I think if I'm going to take the time to bring a film crew out, block it off on the calendar, travel, research a route, and put all the work and all the resources into it that we are, it's gotta be big. And it's gotta be scary big. And these rides, although they are huge and they have not been easy, I haven't questioned whether or not I could actually do it. So I think really that's what I wanna do in the future is, if we're gonna do something to this extent, I have to push myself to create a serious RDP, and it's gotta be scary. These rides were really cool, they were fun, they tested my grit, but they weren't scary. And I didn't genuinely question whether or not I could do it. So I think that's what's next.